I'm sure all of you have this quality. I have a favorite grocery store. 9 times out of 10, I'll go to that grocery store. We won't say what it is, even though the description I give will make it pretty obvious in this very small town. It has parking spots where you have to cross and be a pedestrian, but it also has a shoe store right next to it where you don't have to be a pedestrian. You don't have to worry about the cars that might not be looking for you. You can park at this shoe store and go in, except there's a sign that says, shoe store parking only. Well, whenever there are times the shoe store is closed, and I know the hours, 7 p.m. and 6 p.m. on Sundays. That's when the shoe store closes, and that's when I park right there, because I have the best way to walk in. And I always plan to myself, if somebody says, you're not supposed to be there, they're going to tow your car, I was going to get as scabrous as possible. Not in the offensive way, but in the very pointed, sarcastic way. Can you tell me where the shoe store is? It's closed. I can't buy shoes right now. Or maybe I'll tell them, you know what? I'm intending to buy shoes, but they're not open until tomorrow morning, so I'm just going to get some groceries while I'm here. And that's the importance of standing your ground. I know that phrase has come up a little bit in a very serious light over the last few weeks, given the George Zimmerman case. Now, as you all know, George Zimmerman was a volunteer night watchman who shot an unarmed teenager named Trayvon Martin. The case took a lot of heat because Trayvon Martin was an unarmed teenager whose only apparent problem seemed to be that he was wearing a hoodie and he was black. So race automatically became injected. And there were a few humorous things that happened, even though it was a death. Some people taking things too seriously and not even looking at what they're saying. And it got a little bit out of control. CNN actually reacted during the testimony. It was revealed that Trayvon Martin, while being pursued by this volunteer night watchman, who eventually shot him, he had said on the cell phone to somebody, I'm being followed by this creepy-ass Kraken. And everybody said, wait a minute. Why are we talking about racism? Trayvon is the only person who brought up racism in this case. And CNN went with their chyron, which, for people who aren't in the news business, is the screen headline. And it said, N-word versus cracker, which is worse? And I thought to myself something that John Mulaney once said in a stand-up. I know which one's worse. It's N-word. You know how I know that? Because we're saying cracker, and we're not saying the other word. If you're comparing the badness of two words, and you won't even say one, that's the worst word. And there are a lot of people who will take sides no matter what. The Stand Your Ground case, just to define it, is a law that's in Florida and some others. It basically says if you're in a conflict, you're not required to retreat if the situation should get violent. You have every right to shoot somebody to end the conflict. Unfortunately, the law has been misapplied in a lot of scenarios. The Tampa Bay Times has done an excellent look at it. And in a third of the cases, it turns out that the defendant who claimed stand your ground initiated the conflict. And since we brought up race earlier, it's also been reported that when stand your ground is used as a defense, when you shoot somebody who's white, the case is thrown out, or you're acquitted 59% of the time. When the victim is black, it's 79% of the time. People look at those stats and they have to wonder, is stand your ground basically free license to shoot minorities or whoever might scare you, whether it be somebody who's threatening your life or just somebody who doesn't look like you? And that's what I hate about the stand your ground law. Other people they'll stand their own ground. They'll give you the facts about how they have the right to defend themselves under the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment isn't up for debate. It is in the Constitution for a reason. And you've seen a lot of arguments on both sides where everybody is just holding firm. And I might not agree with everybody on what they're saying, but I do appreciate them standing their ground to take the phrase. And it kind of reminds me of something that happened to me at the gym. This is rather a funny story as well. I was just walking on the treadmill, and I noticed this guy parking. Parking comes up a few times in this story, obviously. He parks in the handicap spot. Just goes in, works out. Doesn't look like there's anything particularly wrong with this guy. So I just walk up to him like, no, it's just got in the handicap spot. Are you handicapped? And he said, yeah, I was injured in the war. Bad move, because not only have I stood up for the wrong thing, I've insulted a veteran. And I hate to do that because I support the troops. If you don't support the troops, you'll be the troops. I'm not sure I can carry this large gun and run away at the same time. But what was great about that was he wasn't all that mad at all. He actually thought the moment was funny. And we got along really well at the gym after that because he appreciated the fact that I was willing to, much like him, fight for somebody who might not have been able to fight for themselves. And we'll talk about cases that may involve race as long as there are people who have different races. We're never going to get over that. But I think the important thing as Americans is we've always got to remember what our values are. And maybe we can convince somebody one way or another. And when everybody stands their own ground, the truth will be the thing that comes out.